everyone, my name is Shivani Tyagi, your philosophy teacher, and today we are going to understand that from where this philosophy took place. Who were the first philosophers and what their ideologies were, what they were thinking. So imagine that there is a place where everyone is talking about religion, everyone is talking about God, about spirituality, right? And there is this one person who starts asking questions like what water is made from, what earth is made from, what life is, what we are. These kinds of questions are asked. Then how people around you will behave. If you'll ask these questions today also, तो लोग बोलेंगे कि पागल हो गया, right? But there were philosophers who were asking these kinds of questions, and not only asking, they were asking, basically, answering it in a very rationalist way. Now let's understand कि philosophy आई कहाँ से. So when we talk about philosophy, so there are 5 schools, right? So which 5 schools are there? So Ionian schools, Pythagorean, right? And another one is Ephesian, and after that Eleatic. And this school was basically talking about pluralism, pluralist school. So these schools were there, right? So now there are different philosophers in these schools. So when we talk about Thales, so he was from Ionian school. When we talk about Anaximander, he was Eleatic schools. And there are these schools, right? These philosophers were present in these schools. Now let's understand them one by one, that who gave what theory, what they were believing, what they were thinking about it. Okay. So when we talk about these pre-Socratic philosophers, so they came with their ideologies. Like in Ionian schools, we have like Thales, we have Anaximander, we have Anaximenes, and then we have Heraclitus, right? So in Pythagorean school, we have Pythagorean, we have Ephesian, now let's understand these pre-Socratic philosophers. So what pre-Socratic philosophers are and what types of are there, as I will explain it to you. There are 5 types of these philosophers: Ionian, Pythagorean, Ephesian, Eleatic, and then pluralist, right? So when we talk about Ionian school, Thales, Anaximander, Anaximenes, Heraclitus is of Ephesian, and for Pythagoras we have in Pythagorean school. Then Eleatic we have Parmenides, Zeno, and then in pluralist we have Democritus, Empedocles, and Anaxagoras. Now we are going to understand their philosophies one by one, from like who was the first philosopher, what their ideologies were, how they were different with each other. Let's go and understand them one by one. So basically these are like first philosopher in history, first philosophers who basically turned their philosophy from metaphysics to rationalist thinking, right? They started asking questions beyond religion. They started asking questions more related to science, right? They basically tried to connect philosophies with maths, with science, with more basically logical thinking. Now when we focus, they basically focus on nature, cosmos, and origin of life, right? They started to understand the reason behind those things which are happening around us, right? There were philosophers, basically people who believed that because these disasters are happening to us because of Zeus is angry with us, right? God is angry with us, right? So they were like connecting these theories with the religion. But these philosophers came and they started, giving theories related to science, related to the reality, related to more logical reasoning, right? So they moved away from mythology to rational thoughts, right? Their concepts were more related to science, more related to reasonings. And they laid the foundation for Western philosophy. This is from where our Western philosophy, birth of Western philosophy came. Now when we talk about Thales, Thales is basically first philosopher, father of philosophy. So he believed that water is a fundamental element. Why he believed that? Because he says that if we notice, right, we need water for moisture, plants need water, right? This whole existence is dependent on water. So with the basis of this theory, he said this, environment, this world is made up of water. Then he says that it is basically flat disk. Earth is like a flat disk which is floating on water, right? So this was another theory that he gave about the world. And he predicted a solar eclipse, which is a very big thing at that time, and people are asking about the questions basically about the religion. But he was the person who predicted a solar eclipse. Now imagine that what he was going through, what in his mind questions were evolving, right? These kinds of philosophers basically came into us and they gave birth to Western philosophy. They gave to rational thinking. Coming to the next philosopher and experimenter, who is the Ionian Socrates scholar, and he says that yes, Thales is right. The ultimate principle is matter, but he did not call it water, right? So he says that the concept is a priori. So basically it is infinite, it is boundless, and it is eternal, right? And he says that everything is made of it and everything basically goes back to it. And he says that earth is not, floating on water as it is said by Thales. He says that earth is cylindrical. Now evolution theory, he says this is something related. He gave a theory which is somehow related or somehow merges with evolution theory. He says that earth is fluid, right? And evaporation and that heat and moisture humans were produced. He says that basically this earth is like a fluid, and once it evaporates, after evaporating that moisture, right, that heat basically gives moisture, and from that moisture we all are developed. So somehow it is related to the evolution theory, right? Now it is basically telling us that how we all took birth, how this world came into existence. So these kinds of answers were given to us by these philosophers. Next we have Anaximenes. So what Anaximenes says, he is that earth is the fundamental substance. As it was said by other philosophers, that water, cylinder, right, all these things were said to us, but he says that air is the fundamental substance, right? And he says that earth to be a flat disk floating in air, as it was said to us by Thales, that it is floating on water. He says that it is floating on air, right? And he gives two theory of it: rarefaction, right, which is hot, and condensation, which is cold, right, and dense, right? So what did he say? He explains that how air turns into different forms, right, these two forms, and he introduces a scientific approach to change. And what was the approach? He says that how matter actually come into existence. What he says that when this matter, these things are basically when air is in dense form, when it is in condensed form, condensation form, it is cold and dense, then it basically reacts with air, and then this matter is formed, right? This kind of theory was given to us by Anaximenes. Now next we have Heraclitus. Heraclitus says that everything flows, right? And he says that firmament is the ultimate reality. So what he means that everything flows? According to him, nothing remains same. If you step into the water, right, that water will change. You are not stepping into the same river twice. This is given to us by Heraclitus, which is a very important quotation. It is used in essay and in other classes. Whenever the theories of change come, we often use Heraclitus theory. So what would he say is that we never step into same river twice. Everything around us is basically changing. We are never stepping into the same thing again, right? If you step into the river, that water which was touching your feet, right, at that particular moment, it is going to change, right? That water is not going to touch it. So this is what he says, that change is there in the environment, it is happening, right? So next, fire is the fundamental element. As previous philosophers were saying that air is the fundamental reality element, water is the fundamental reality, right? So he says that fire is the fundamental element. And he also creates harmony, opposites harmony. What was opposites harmony? Basically like life and death, right? Day and night, health and disease, good and evil. And these changes are required, these opposites are required for the evolution, to to have the more revolutionary world. Now Heraclitus argued that everything contains its opposite, and reality is shaped by this tension between these opposite forces. So whatever the tension is happening between these forces, whatever the tension is happening between life and death, right, these are required, these are necessary, because everything is basically opposite of each other and they are required to shape the reality. Understood till here? Now we have Pythagoras. What Pythagoras says, we all are aware of it and we have read about him. So he is that number is the reality. It is, numbers are the one which governs the universe, right? And everything floats under this. And he is the one who invented the Pythagorean theory, which we basically learn in maths also. And he believed in reincarnation. So being a rationalist philosopher, the philosopher who believes that reality is filled with logic, with scientific evidences, he is the philosopher who believes in reincarnation and says that there is cycle of birth and rebirth. right? So this is something new, and he is the kind of philosopher who believed in such things. Even after going through numbers, going with evidences and scientific proofs and logical thinking, he still believes in reincarnation, and he says that harmony of opposites. So these are the things that are said to us by Pythagoras. Now coming to Parmenides. So what Parmenides says, that he says that reality is unchanging. Change is an illusion. There is no change, as it was said to us by Heraclitus. So he's like opposite of Heraclitus, right? So what he says, that changing is myth. There is no change in this reality, right? We all are same, and he introduced this rational argument. So as Heraclitus was saying, that these revolutionary ideas should be in us, right? They should exist in us so that we can move towards these revolutions, these changes, right? And according to him, there are no changes. We all are the same, right? So coming to the next philosopher, Zeno, what Zeno says, that he created famous paradoxes, and he argued that motion is impossible, and he gave the philosophy the keyword monism, supported Parmenides' ideas. So just like he said, Parmenides says that change is not happening. In the same way, he also says that motion is impossible, you are not moving, right? So to this he gives a theory. Suppose there is animal A, there is animal B, right? Although like this is not practically possible, or whatever examples he gave, it could be like these are, I will not even say that they are debatable. They could be like questioned and they can be proved wrong. In practical life, somewhere his examples are not following up. So let's take his example, what he said, that suppose there is animal A and there is animal B, right? Suppose take rabbit and take tortoise, right? So you will observe, you will see that when A is basically, suppose we are making tortoise, right, move further, right? For suppose 1 kilometer it is like running, and then this animal A, rabbit, is following tortoise, right? So what he says, that you'll always find a distance between these two. So according to his theory, rabbit is never following up tortoise, but in practical life it is not possible. For like after some time, this is for sure that rabbit is going to catch tortoise, right, or may defeat it, right? But according to him, there is always distance present between them. So there is no change happening in reality. This is what he tries to prove with it, which is somehow like it was basically contradicted by many philosophers. Now let's understand another philosopher, Empedocles, the four elements. So he says that everything is made of earth, water, fire, right, and basically all these things, and these things are basically somehow, and there is sky also. These philosophies are still following up. We still follow them, we still implement them, we still use them to have the analysis, right? Now we have cosmic forces. What are cosmic forces? Love. So love is which keeps everything bound, right? And then we have strife which basically separates everything, right? And theory of evolution. This theory of evolution was given to us by Empedocles, right? So I'm coming up with this PDF because somehow, these are not in syllabus of UPSC, but we forget these theory, these philosophies, and we should understand the history. We should understand the history of us. If you will not, then you won't be able to proceed further, and you won't even you won't be able to understand things. Like we often start our theories from rationalist philosophers with Descartes, right? But you should understand and analyze that from where these philosophies are emerging, right? So this is why it is very important that you are understanding these, right? Now coming up to Anaxagoras. So what Anaxagoras says, that unlike the others, he said nothing is pure, everything contains a part of everything. So he says that everything is correlated, right? There is like some particles which are emerging in each other, right? And he says that he believed in a universal intelligent, nous, right, that organizes everything. So basically there are small particles, right, and they are correlated with each other, and who is managing these particles? Who is basically thinking and organizing all these? Nous is the one who is organizing all these, right? So this was said to us by Anaxagoras. Now coming to Democritus, what did he say? The father of atomism. He says that first philosopher, the universe is made of atoms and empty spaces. So there are atoms present in each and every object, right? So this atomic theory, we have learned it in our 7th or 8th class also. So this is the philosopher who came up with this philosophy, the first philosopher who talked about atoms. Now atoms are always moving, right? And he says that no need for God, everything follows of laws of nature. He says there are basically atoms, right? Small particles which cannot be divided further. There are basically science theories which says that now we can divide the atoms, but these philosophers, they said that we cannot divide these atoms further, and every object is made of these, and basically they are like always moving, right? And that's how they organize this. This is what Democritus says, right? And his ideas inspired modern atomic theory even 2000 years lately. Now Empedocles, what he says, that everything, there is like 4 elements, right? And earth, water, fire and air, right? And from these particles, this world is made up of. Love binds things together while strife tears them apart. Like I gave you this evolution theory, I explained it to you, and this is what Anaxagoras says. So the comparison is very important between these 3 philosophers. Now there is this joke that I came up with. So everything, basically Thiel says that everything is made up of water, and this Anaximander says that I think it's all boundless, and to this Heraclitus says that I think it's all fire. And Parmenides says that time and change are illusion. So somehow he's like contradicting whatever the big theories they come up with, right? So Parmenides is saying that whatever you are saying, like whatever things you are saying, that these are changes are illusions. Doesn't matter you're coming with atomic theory, doesn't matter what theories you are coming up with, or any fire theory. So basically these monads theory, fire theories, water theory, atoms theory, these are basically baseless because nothing is changing. So they like threw him out of the window. So this is something that I came up with. So these philosophers are very important, because if you are reading philosophy, if you are trying to understand rationalist and empiricist, you should know that from where our philosophy took birth, right? Who was the first philosophers, to talk about these things? Who differentiated this mythology with, this rationalist thinking? So these important questions should be analyzed, and then only we should move towards the reality of the philosophy.